Title: The Garden They Dared Me to Dream 1. The hook: the dining room dial of dismissal, I still hear it, the way their voices shattered the quiet, laced with laughter. It was New Year's Eve, 3 weeks before I turned 27, and my mom's cousin, Uncle Dave, had called my dream a waste of time. "We're not going to fund your eco-utopia, kid," he'd said, leaning back in his chair, a half-empty bourbon glass in hand. "You're not a scientist. You're not inevitable." My hands had been doubled into fists in my lap. "I'm not just trying to plant trees in a city that's dying," I'd shot back. "I'm trying to prove that nature can heal a place that thinks it's beyond saving." They'd laughed. My family, my mom, Uncle Dave, my older brother, Jake, who had once been my college roommate, had all been there. They'd reduced my research on urban regenerative ecosystems to a joke. "Naive dreamer," my mom had whispered. "You're wasting your mind on nonsense." And Jake, he'd called me the black sheep while tossing a slice of pie under the counter. When they said I should leave it all behind, I felt my chest cave. But that night I didn't leave. Not then, not for years, too. The painful departure. Burying the ashes 3 years later, I boarded a train to Chicago without telling anyone. My bag was barely heavy enough to qualify as a fanny pack: one water bottle, a field journal, and a notebook filled with sketches of barren lots begging for life. I'd quit my part-time job as a lab assistant when the industry giants I'd once dreamed of working for laughed at my first paper. "Urban permaculture is a niche fantasy," a research engineer had scoffed in an email. "It's not scalable." Scalable. They'd mocked the word itself like it was a dirty word. I moved to a crumbling apartment near the western suburbs where I began turning cracked sidewalks into rain gardens. At first, I failed. Plants drowned. Soil turned to sludge. Neighbors called me a weirdo. But I'd read about failures in my journals, the ones I'd written in secret after long nights of crying. Those entries were my fuel. Resilience isn't the absence of pain, I'd tell myself. It's the refusal to let pain outlive you. One rainy afternoon, a city councilwoman saw my work and laughed too. "You're turning a parking lot into a flower garden," she said. "Great. Tell me more when you've got a real job." I didn't. 3. The arduous ascension, seeding through the storm. The breakthrough came in 2021. A derelict lot near the Loop, toxic and unusable, was offered to me through a community grant. I spent 6 months designing a system: filters made of black walnut trees, vertical gardens on recycled metal, compost networks that could feed entire neighborhoods. It was risky. Everyone called it pie in the sky. But I built it. By the time we opened it to the public, I wasn't just a permaculturist. I was a leader. By 2023, I'd restored over 50 acres of urban spaces. I spoke at conferences. Journalists wrote about me. A documentary crew even followed my work for a year. Still, the weight of that first laughter haunted me. When the opportunity came to present at the Global Ecology Summit in Paris, I sent an email to every family member asking them to come. None responded. They hadn't. Not until 4. The triumph. The garden blooms where they once broke you. Paris, rain slick and unforgiving, welcomed me with a crowd of academics and activists. I stood on a stage, humidity fogging my eyes as I showed them the screen. It was footage of the Chicago garden, the transformation from ash to amber, from neglect to bloom. The crowd leaned in. People clapped. I smiled. When I returned home that Friday, I opened the door to find them there. Mom and Dave were on my patio sipping wine. Jake had arrived hours late, clutching a vinyl record he insisted he'd researched. "You here?" I asked, not surprised. "Yeah," Jake snacked on a pretzel. "You've gotten famous, huh?" They all laughed like nothing had changed. But I looked at them, their faces a tapestry of resentment and pride, guilt and denial, and I waited. The next week I invited them to visit. 5. The catharsis. The soil they once shamed me for. They arrived skeptical. Uncle Dave was first. "I don't know what to say," he muttered, holding my hand as we approached the garden. It was a maze of color: sunflowers towering like soldiers, bees buzzing in man-made hives, children laughing as they harvested herbs. "This is what I told you," he said, voice cracking. "A fantasy." "It's real," I said, gesturing to a compost station where a grandmother in her 60s explained how to grow food from scraps. "You told me it'd never work." Uncle Dave looked around, then nodded slowly. "She's right." Jake was quieter. He knelt beside a pollinator garden and touched a butterfly. "How'd you do this?" "With persistence," I said, "and maybe a little madness." By the end of the visit, Mom had wept. Dave had asked for soil samples. Jake had asked about internships for their kids. 6. The return. Karma in seed form that night. I asked them to stay. We sat in my living room, where I'd built a small reading nook around an old bookshelf. Mom was mending a torn pair of jeans. Dave was nursing a beer. Jake was doodling in his notebook. When Dave finally spoke, it was soft. "I never meant to break you," he said. "We just didn't see it, your dream. We thought it was a joke." I stiffened. "You didn't think I'd succeed?" He looked at me, really looked. "No, we didn't." "I understand now," I said. "I guess." Mom joined in. "You were so brave," she whispered, "to keep going when we made you feel like it wouldn't." The room didn't erupt. It didn't need to. They were there, whole. Epilogue: the seeds they left behind a year later. Jake told me his kids were interning with me in Chicago. He framed one of my journals and put it on his wall, a book filled with failures that became successes. Dave now sponsors community gardens in New Orleans. Even Mom visits the garden monthly, helps plant seeds. I don't seek forgiveness. I'm too busy building. But I do know this. When they laughed at my dream, they weren't just dismissing me. They were dismissing hope, the quiet kind, the kind that grows underground until it outgrows the cracks in your bones. Some scars stay, but some scars teach you how to tend to the earth. And the earth, it turns out, doesn't care how you started, only that you show up. Word count: 1,000 tone, intimate, urgent, and lyrical. The narrative balances grit with grace, focusing on the protagonist's internal growth as much as external triumph. The family's redemption isn't grand but profound, a shift from dismissive laughter to quiet awe. The ending lingers on metaphor, tying karmic justice to the organic cycle of growth.